Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so thrilled to be talking about the wonderful series Get Millie Black. I am joined today by creator and executive producer Marlon James, executive producer Jami O'Brien, executive producer and CEO of Motive Pictures Simon Maxwell, along with cast members Tamara Lawrence, Gershwyn Eustache Jr., Chyna McQueen, and Joe Dempsie. And Marlon, I wanted to start in talking a little bit about the way that you've created this show, because I almost feel like it sets this thesis of the themes and the topics right at the top in talking about the idea of ghosts and things that really haunt us from their past. And we see so much of that through Millie's journey. And I was curious in how you wanted to use that, not only to explore her character, but in turn, the way that we start to see that develop and what is the past that everybody else is running from.
Well, I think if you're any sort of show, any sort of story that's set in a country like Jamaica, in a country that have a history of colonialism or anything like that, you're talking about a story that's haunted. You're talking about a lot of times the ghost in the room is the past. And it's funny, in a lot of ways, the ghost element was actually one of the last elements to be added to this show. A lot of that even happened post, when we were realizing the stories that were there, that we weren't that we had to fine tune. And it sounds like it's funny. It's one of the first things you hear in the show, but it's one of the last things we end up coming up realizing when we realize that every story in Jamaica is a ghost story. That's something you realize when you're looking at a whole sum total thing and you go, man, this thing is really haunted. And I'd love to take credit for saying that happened from the get-go, but that's the kind of thing that happens in storytelling when you're looking at what you have in front of you. You go, oh my God, this is so haunted. And I think so that's how that happens. But it also means that a lot of the elements were there. Millie is constantly trying to recapture her past. Millie is ultimately Millie is trying to save a lost child. And that's something that it becomes her obsession. Curtis at one point saying, she spent so much time searching the lost people that she finally lost herself. And I think that's it in a lot of ways, where as a Caribbean writer, I'm always responding to erasure anyway. I'm always responding to stories that don't get told. And I think with this, to me, it's almost inevitable that Millie ends up working in missing persons, because she is responding to erasure, and she's trying to unerase and recapture. And I think that it just all sort of lined up.
Absolutely. And to that point as well, Tamara, like what Marlon was saying, which is Millie's trying to protect a child. And, it feels like she's trying to create a protection that she was never able to do for her sibling as a kid, especially once she was sent to England. And that must actually be a really rich gift as an actor, to have such a personal motivation to carry through in all of the scenes. And I was curious in playing her and really developing this character in your performance, how that really seeped into so many of the motivations and so many of the moments for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think Millie's profession and obsession with work is rooted in the subconscious wound of not being mothered, being neglected, having a sort of survivor's guilt by being the one that was sent to England and having different opportunities to have her sibling. I think she is trying to retrieve her lost sibling through this missing persons case. I think Millie's subconscious almost thinks that if she can find this child, she can mend a broken past. And I think oftentimes when we have unprocessed wounds, we end up trying to control the future in a sort of bid to change our past. And so the text was very layered in that way, in which you sort of recognize the fallout of Millie not really processing anything that's happening to her. She can't process Curtis. She can't process the prospect of losing somebody else that she cares about. She can't process that Hibiscus is not the sibling that she wants her to be, that is going to kind of play shop and home in the way that she wants her to do. She can't receive love from Richie. There's many aspects in which Millie is constantly re-abandoning herself almost. And but yeah, I think the fallout and what we see, even though there is ultimately justice, is that Millie needs to learn to yield and surrender, and that you can't control everything, and that that the home that she wants to curate is open to her if she could just see it through the lens of the present rather than the lens of their history.
And in Chyna, in playing Hibiscus, at first when Millie comes back into her life, there's this real wall and this guard up because it's been so long. And, Hibiscus is the one that was left in that house to still face the abuse from their mother once Millie was sent away. And so in playing and finding that relationship between the two of them, how did you find the guard that you thought was very important for her to have up and very valid, but then also the ways that she does gradually allow Millie back into her life bit by bit?
Yeah, because at first Hibiscus is why are we even here at the house? This is I don't think you understand. You left me at the house and you leave Hibiscus in so much trauma, and she has a lot to deal with, and she has to survive on her own. And Hibiscus is very strong, by the way. And so when Millie came back, she saw Millie and she's like, okay, now you're here. You need to. This is me now. This is Hibiscus. This is how things should be. You need to accept Hibiscus as who she is, and need to also accept that there's other trans sisters, who needs Hibiscus, who found out upon that you also need to understand, like, that's no longer Hibiscus home. Hibiscus home now is in, the community, and you need to accept it, whether you're stubborn, whether you like it or not.
I love that. And Gershwyn, in terms of talking about Curtis, he's the one person that Millie allows herself to trust and feel close to, and kind of mentions, you're not the most awful person here. I can kind of put up with you. But he has this real unspoken understanding of her. He knows when to try to tell her to hold back, even though she's not going to listen. Go to bed. The case isn't going to change overnight. It's okay to take the time for yourself, even though he knows she's still going to ruminate on it all. And so in finding that rapport between these two characters, I just wanted to ask you about how you really wanted to also just create this unspoken language and understanding that he really has in her.
I think firstly it was like looking at the admiration that he has for Millie, and for myself, like, it was easy to feed into because I have a personal admiration for Tamara. Like, we knew each other before this, and sort of bringing that into these two characters. It's funny you mentioned sort of him saying those things to Millie in terms of, rest. You could just breathe here, whether she listens to it or not. It's like, it's a thing of her allowing him to be that person that says that to her, but him also allowing himself, giving himself like the license, like, this is how I might possibly be able to help her. Like, it feels like, well, for me, it felt like he's taken a lot from her in terms of the way that she operates. Like, it's that freedom that she has to, she needs to find out this information. She's going to go for it, no matter who's going to get in her way. There's an admiration for how she operates there. And, he kind of, he's learning a lot from her. So, and also then he's, like I said, give himself the license to be the one. How can I help her? I can see her sort of spinning out. I can see her sort of, like, completely going after things. Like, and even if it 5% of it lands with you, just take it easy. Look after yourself. Playing Curtis was an incredible journey. There was a lot that sort of looking into it before, and then once you get on the ground in Kingston, and speaking to everybody and sort of taking in the environment, that's incredible experience.
Amazing. And Joe, in talking about your character, through the episode, there is very much from his perspective in terms of the voiceover. We learn more about his past and the fact that he grew up without having anything. And because of that, he has this real insatiable drive and lust. And he recognizes that even now that he has all the things that he always wanted, he has a family, he has a kid, he has a really successful career, that he does understand that actually nothing is ever going to be enough for him. And I was interested in the way that you you took that into playing this character and just finding this constant, just insatiable need for something that he knows he's never going to be able to fulfill.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that end point there is the kicker, isn't it? Is that he doesn't know that he's not going to be able to fulfill it yet. You know, by the time, you know, as we're following him through the story, he hasn't come to that realization yet that nothing will ever be enough. So he's still, you know, we are seeing him like in the thick of that pursuit, that sort of pursuit of more. And, you know, I remember that when I was offered the role, Marlon wrote me a letter. And if you remember Marlon, and as we've heard earlier on, the show has sort of evolved constantly through the making of it. But you said in your letter that, you know, that this is a show about power structures and how they can be used to nefarious ends. And I think that, you know, through the character of Holborn, you know, he is in many ways the personification of a sort of rotten system, that very specifically being the Metropolitan Police. And he's someone that is using the apparatus of that system to nefarious ends and kind of stress testing it from the outside. But then I sort of took a broader point from that he, you know, that everyone is to some degree a product of their environment. You know, we're all a product of systems in some way, and the poverty that Holborn grew up in is the result of a system that does not work, and these systems create these monsters. And I feel like that is sort of the best way that I found to kind of understand Holborn and to unlock that. And again, what drives most people to do heinous things is on some level fear of something. And I think for Holborn, it's that fear of going back, you know, if that poverty from which he came, he doesn't ever want to go back there. And that keeps driving him forward to the most dangerous extremes, essentially.
Absolutely. And Jami, in terms of talking about, you know, the story of this, I love that way that it does have these different voiceovers and these different perspectives episode to episode, because I think it gives a lot more depth to these characters and we get to understand them in ways that maybe we wouldn't have without it. You know, and to Marlon's point, the way that this story was told kept developing and growing throughout the process. And so I just wanted to ask about how that came about and just the way that you feel that really evolved and grew this story into something bigger and more personal.
You know, it's interesting. I came onto the project late. I came on during the post process. And so that storytelling device had already been established. We explored it. We kind of, when I came on, Marlon and I worked pretty closely together with input, obviously, from Simon as well, where we kind of like kicked the tires on everything that was there. Expanded the voiceover. We tried a version without the voiceover. Then we brought the voiceover back in. The voiceover kind of kept adjusting and we kept massaging it as we kind of drilled down and focused on the stories. When I joined the show, you know, I keep saying it was like there was an embarrassment of riches across the show. There was this, you know, phenomenal cast, Marlon's phenomenal voice, you know, Jamaica, which is just stunning in the way that it's portrayed in the show. And all of the episodes were really, really long. They were all kind of over. And so it was a lot of us trying to like really focus in on what is it that we're trying to say. And I think that's where a lot of the themes started to emerge for us. We knew it was about colonialism. We knew that it was about these sisters. But we really were able to kind of sharpen and put a finer point on what is driving each of these characters. And I think, you know, obviously I'm just stating the obvious here, but Marlon is a novelist first and foremost. His prose is spectacular. And I think that these voiceovers really do allow us to really get kind of a special front seat look at the novelist that our creator is.
It also shows just how richly drawn Millie is as a character, because the fact that you can take a different character's POV every time, episode to episode, and have a different interpretation of Millie, or at least an interpretation that continues to add layers episode by episode. It's a completely unique concept and conceit, but it also shows just, how completely multi-layered she is as a protagonist.
That's such a great point. And, Simon as well, wanting to ask you just about the way that Marlon has told this story is so intimately connected to Millie for the audience. And yet, like you're all touching upon, there's so many bigger themes and bigger topics and perspectives, and even just the case that she's investigating starts out as I'm looking for a missing person and then becomes this much bigger discourse throughout the series in terms of what it means, not just to her, but this whole community. And so for you, how did you find working with Marlon, the way that he told this intimate story, but also all the other things that this allowed you to touch upon?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the really exciting things. I knew that in Marlon's hands, what is essentially a noir thriller would be completely reinvented. It's Kingston noir, but where the location gets to reinvent the noir genre, and the noir genre gets to reinvent and allow us to reinterpret Kingston and Kingston society. So essentially, Marlon created a character, an iconic character in Millie, and a vehicle through which we could explore a whole facets and dimensions of Kingston society that we've just not seen before. And I knew it would be provocative and thought-provoking, but also ultimately progressive in what it's exploring and how it's exploring, unseen characters and communities. So it's both a propulsive crime thriller, but also really nourishing. And it will allow people to feel, having seen it, that they've learned a whole different interpretation of or understanding of Jamaican culture, which is no mean feat in a 5-episode show.
Tamara and Gershwyn, in talking about your characters a little bit more, one of the scenes that I thought told us so much about not just their friendship and their dynamic, but also who they are as people, is the scene where it's the two of them and their romantic partners all together, because it's that thing where you just see they're so incapable of switching their brains off and just having a normal conversation over dinner, and I think especially Millie's the one really leading the charge in just like constantly bringing things back. You see the way that her brain just never shuts off from that. And so I just wanted to ask about getting to play a scene like that, and then all the subtext that you're able to bring into their relationship and the conversation that they're having in amongst being there with other people as well.
Yeah, I really love that scene. It's like a nice moment of levity amidst everything else. For me, I think it also really illuminates Millie's loneliness. Like ultimately, it happens just after she drops off Hibiscus, who is, who she really wanted to spend the evening with. She hits up Richie, who's this guy that, maybe nothing could happen there, maybe something could, but I don't think Millie's really open enough to allow that relationship to fully develop because of all of her priorities and preoccupations. But yeah, I think in and amidst the banter, we see that there is always the low level presence of work, but as the kind of scene evolves and the guys chat to each other and laugh, the shot really just encapsulates the fact that Millie doesn't really feel connected to anyone or anything really in the height of her preoccupations with work, in the sort of, even in the moments where she's trying to switch off, she is she's always thinking, and in the moments where she's trying to connect, there's a sense of there's a profound kind of vacancy from other people, and so I think that's an important lens on her vulnerability, and also why she chooses work, because work is something to focus on, work is something to do. Work gives her a sense of purpose and value, where maybe she doesn't always get that validation from Hibiscus, and also, on some level, her inner child never got that validation, that she is sort of enough without having to do things, to constantly be in flux. And so, that's what that means to me.
Yeah, no, I love playing the scene. Like, it's I mean, we have Marlon there, but like it's incredibly written for me just because I think what was important in terms of showing the Curtis and Daniel relationship was that they are very loving and very supportive, and we see the lightness that they're able to have, as Tamara said, that levity, like amongst all this stuff that's going on in Millie Black. Hey, you have a moment where they're just getting prepared, and Millie and her boyfriend turn up, and they're looking through the peephole, and there's some laughter going on there. There's it's not jealousy, but like really, but then we're welcoming Millie and her boyfriend into their lives. There's this openness when they're at home, like that loving relationship is on full display. And then in and amongst that, we see the jealousy from Curtis because Millie's now working with Mr. Britain, who's come over to take over, and wanting to find out exactly why she's got in trouble, wanting to be part of that case, missing out on that. And so in and amongst them, when you're filming it, you feel that, but then like sitting as a viewer watching that, it's a side that I didn't get in that moment, just the sadness of seeing Millie completely on the outside in amongst us, as much and as welcoming as we feel we've been in the moment. So yeah, a brilliant scene. Enjoyed it.
It's also sadness in like you say, seeing Curtis and Daniel's relationship and like what that could be all the time if it was able to be. Like as a viewer, I remember thinking that, like getting to see that snapshot of their like domestic life and going like, oh, that's how they could just be like all the time if things were different.
What I also think about that scene is, sorry, just a quick line, which is when Curtis says, so I hear you run a straight man running a gay bar. And he says, Richard just very simply says, I run a bar for everybody. And I think like that line always really moves me because it's also just like a testament to allyship, Jamaican allyship, which is also a very important depiction of this show through Millie as a straight character, but also characters like Richie and bars like the Bangarang, because we have so much Jamaica has a reputation for being very transphobic and very homophobic. And of course that exists, as it does in many places around the world. But I think, the filming experience also showed me the beauty of the queer community and the places where people are safe to be themselves as well.
Yeah, you're right. It's such a great line that kind of adds so much. And Marlon, one of the things that I appreciated so much in watching this show that I thought was so interesting is the way that you constantly add new perspectives to the audience, and the way that we view characters is constantly evolving and changing. And, especially this is going out after episode 4, I think Joe's character is a great example of that. We view him in so many different ways just in those first few episodes. And, like Jami was bringing up, the voiceover giving us all of this different perspective on how we're looking at Millie as a character throughout. And so how did you set about writing these characters and writing this narrative, but always thinking about how you could add these layers and perspectives for the audience?
Yeah, even whatever I'm writing, I'm a big believer that characters should do things that people do. And two things people do that we don't expect is surprise and disappoint. And we don't see those things coming, and it was very important for me that characters do that, not necessarily in super dramatic ways. I don't think neither in the first episode, neither Millie nor Hibiscus expects Millie to misgender her sister at this stage in the game. So it comes as a surprise, and it comes as it comes as a kind of a little heartbreak. So that because the process is still going. But again, these are people. And there's this part in the process when you're writing, when your characters become human. And then that's when they start to surprise you. Like for me, a good writing day is me going, I didn't see that coming. And I'm the one writing it. And I think for me, that's when the show really started. The story started to pick up. All the characters start to do things where I'm like, I didn't see this coming at all. And you hit this magic moment where it's both surprising, but then when you think about who the characters are, it seems almost inevitable. And to me, that's when I knew that, we had good characters and a good show, when they started to do those things that are surprising but inevitable.
Yeah. And Joe, in terms of what we learn about your character in episode 4, it's interesting to watch him kind of suddenly change trajectory and change path, because he's very much been in control of the situation, and we get the impression that he's very adept at controlling a lot of situations around him. But, you know, being thrust into Millie's world, she operates very differently to what he's used to, and suddenly everything is imploding around him. And so how did you feel like that affected him, and how did you want to play him differently once he starts to feel all the pressure pushing in on him?
I mean, I think that's hopefully in its entirety, like that's one of the most sort of fun things to watch Holborn try and do. You know, I think that he, you know, the interesting part about playing him initially in like the first few episodes was that, unbeknownst to the audience, you know, as an actor, I'm sort of always playing two things at once. You know, I have a stated aim and I have a real aim, which is the exact opposite of that stated aim. And so you're sort of, as an actor, you're trying to sort of leave enough little clues in there for like anyone that would be maybe rewatching it a second time to go, oh, maybe there was a little tell that there was something else going on under the surface, but without giving anything away. But then I think that, you know, part of, again, you talk about the broader themes at play in Get Millie Black. I think that, you know, Marlon's so adept at using the characters in this story to give us sort of, in microcosm, like really big, like macro themes. And, you know, the theme of colonialism is obviously prominent throughout, but, you know, Holborn is kind of is a representative of that as someone from Scotland Yard coming in. You know, in his first scene, you know, Millie even says to him, if you come to colonize our case, you know, she can sort of read the runes already. And I think that part of that is her knowing that regardless of what the Jamaica police force's needs might be, they're going to get usurped by whatever it is that this guy wants. And I think that so I wanted him to enter with a kind of latent superior, if not necessarily overt, but he has a superiority complex, whether he knows it or not. And I think that for him, this is going to be pretty straightforward. None of these people are going to be a problem. He's going to get what he wants because he's Luke Holborn from Scotland Yard. And then I don't think it takes him too long to figure out that this is a very, very different place to London. And as the situation starts to sort of leave his grasp, that's when, you know, you're going to see someone, you know, hopefully you see someone who's usually incredibly sort of nimble really start to struggle and flail. And I think that, you know, hopefully you see Holborn go through sort of quite a few stages of that, you know, like denial, anger, grief, emptiness, all of that kind of thing. So I think, yeah, obviously Holborn goes on a real journey through the show, and hopefully that's the kind of journey that we see him go on.
Definitely. And lastly, Chyna, I think in the situation in episode 4 where we have Hibiscus and we have Millie, you know, kind of being held by Holborn, it's such an interesting choice that tells us a lot that Hibiscus is the first one to attack him. And we really see those survival instincts kick in. And so for you, what was important in that scene, and just really thinking about the experience that Hibiscus has had over the years, and just the fact that she kind of instinctively knows what to do. She hasn't gone through that same training that Millie has.
This is like, it's like a sense of I lose. Hibiscus lose Millie before I know I don't want her, know that I need her. But so it's like instincts jumped in, and no, I have to save her, because looking that it's like there's like a flashlight there. She doesn't have anyone. I'm there. I need to save her. So right there, it just kicked in. Wasn't thinking about it. I said, no, I need to do something. I can't just lay down there. And that was a very powerful moment. And one of my favorite scenes. It was like, that really burned. But it was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. I think we see so much about their relationship in that scene as well. Well, all of the character moments in this are so phenomenal, and it's such a great series. So congratulations to all of you on incredible work, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.